It's time to have some fun. This is my Pearl free-floating snare drum, 6.5-inch deep, the steel version, with an Evans hydraulic head, dark, fat, and punchy sounding. And this, right behind me, is the reverb chamber at the Biodynamic headquarters in Heilbronn. What does that mean? A snare drum, a reverb chamber? Bingo! We're gonna record some snare samples, some badass sounding snare samples for you, for me, for everybody. Let's have some fun and get started. Just have a listen to the room mic solo. This is fantastic. And the cool part is that the nice dudes at Biodynamic gave me all their microphones, all their classics and some of their modern microphones. I could just grab whatever I wanted. And I thought, like, why don't we also do a little snare mic shootout? That's always fun to do. So let me show you the setup. We've got 4 microphones here on the better head of the snare drum. We actually have no microphone under the snare because I'm not a big fan of bottom snare mics, first of all, and because we have also got 2 pairs of room microphones, and I've only got 8 channels of mic pre's, so you gotta make some compromises. Whatever. Let's start with those 4 microphones up here. We got 3 dynamic microphones and 1 condenser microphones. These are maybe the go-to microphones from Biodynamic for snare drum or drum shell recording. Here we got a real classic that is Steve Albini's favorite, the legendary M201 dynamic microphone from, I think, the 70s, a great sounding snare microphone. I got 2 of them myself at the studio. Also a great sounding guitar cab microphone. And over here we got another Biodynamic classic, and this one is even from the 60s. This is the M88. Many people call it the Phil Collins vocal microphone. I haven't tried it on snare so far. I know it has a certain high frequency boost, but I'm not sure how it's gonna sound here. We're just gonna check it out. Then over here we got a modern Biodynamic microphone, which is much smaller and of course a lot easier to place on a snare drum. And it's voiced for snare drums and toms, if I'm not mistaken. It has a pretty hefty treble boost, and if you get close, you also get a pretty nice punch from it. Haven't tried it before, but looks like a nice microphone. So you see, we got stuff from the 60s, 70s, and something modern. And finally, over here, we got this one, the clip microphone, and this is a condenser microphone. So I'm expecting to get a very different transient response from this one, and it's always interesting to combine condenser mics with dynamic mics on drums. I don't even know what this one is called, but I'm sure it's gonna sound different than all the other ones. And yeah, it's a clip-on microphone. It's very easy to position, very small. Let's see how it sounds. Let's compare all of them. Follow me inside and let me show you our room microphone setup. So you might see there are 2 setups. One is here, closer to the snare drum, and this is the maybe most legendary Biodynamic microphone, a stereo pair of hypercardioid M160 ribbon microphones. And I've placed them quite close, so they are like, I don't know, like a little more direct sounding, kind of like overhead microphones a little bit. I just want to have like 2 really different room setups that I can blend. Because in the very back of the super diffuse sounding reverb chamber, we got a pair of small diaphragm condensers, MC930s, and they are known to sound pretty airy. That means you can move them quite far away and they will still pick up all the transients and the higher frequencies of the snare. And I actually expect them to pick up a lot of the snare wires and of the sizzle. Let's see if that works. But the idea is to have 2 different setups that we can blend with the close microphones. And here we got my mobile recording setup. Maybe you've seen it before. That's what I'm typically using when I'm on the road. I've got my trustworthy Audient Evo 16, 8 mic pre's. You've seen it in quite a few videos. Sounds fantastic. It always works. It has never let me down. You can record with it for hours. I'm using it all the time when I'm on the road. Really, really great audio interface, very stable. And this is a laptop that I started using half a year ago. It's from a company in New York called Creative Devices. It's a really, really powerful laptop and really affordable as well. I'll put a link below. It's louder than a MacBook and it has a few other little flaws, but it has a lot of power, it's very stable, and I'm using it all the time when I'm on the road. Great as well. So that's the setup, and the cool part about the Audient Evo is, when I'm here and I don't have a lot of time for the sound check, you've got this very, very convenient smart gain feature. So you just press one button, you hit the snare, and the Evo 16 sets all the level for you, which is so freaking convenient. And I guess now it's time to record some samples. Let's go. All samples are recorded. It's time to go home to check out those recordings and to create some kick-ass sounding samples. Let's go back to Kolokela Studio. Just have a listen to the room mic solo. This is fantastic. And I'm really excited how cool these snare samples turned out. And yes, you can download some one-shot samples of the close mics, the overheads, and of course the room mics. That almost sounds like a snare bomb effect, right? I even recorded this one in 2 different tunings. So here's a deeper version with more punch. And again, I'm really excited because this was like a quick and dirty, spontaneous recording session, and it turned out so cool. And later I will tell you how to get the one-shot samples. People inside my academy called Audio Cult, as usual, get the full multi-sampled TCI version of both the tunings. Time to check out the recordings, time to compare the different microphones. As you can see, I've recorded the snare drum from quiet to loud, a lot of hits, and this is the deep tuning and this is the higher tuning. All mics together sound like this. Nice. That's the low tuning and this is the higher tuning. Okay, let's compare the different close mics. Let's just loop one of the harder hits, this one here. Let's start with the M201. And that is a great classic snare mic. I've used it a lot already, so that was like a safe bet. It sounds really punchy and nice. Steve Albini called this one the Better 57. Great snare mic. Let's move on to the M88. Totally different, right? I don't really like that one. It's a little too scooped for my taste. And makes the snare sound a little artificial in comparison to the 201, which is just a little bit nicer. Then we have the modern TG-I 51, which has a nice snap. Sounds quite a bit more modern than the 201, but I still prefer that one. And finally, we've got the clip microphone. I just forgot the name. What is that one called? Let's have a listen. Oh. And just like I expected, you remember, this is the only condenser microphone, and this has such a different transient response, right? It sounds so much faster. It just picks up the snare, the attack totally differently. And because it's quite bright, it also picks up the snare wires nicely. So 3 or 4 mics actually sound awesome. The next thing I did was combining my 2 favorite mics, the 201, a microphone from the 70s, and the TGD58, a very modern microphone. And what happened next was quite fascinating. I was really lucky. Listen to this. So this is the 201 soloed. And when I add the clip mic, listen. There are 2 things happening. First of all, we get that massive, clicky, nice attack. It just sounds so much faster and in your face. We get some nice high frequencies. We get more of the snare wires. But at the same time, and I was not expecting that, the combination of the 2 also like carves out that from coming from the batter head around 500 hertz. So this is the 201 alone. And when I bring in the TGD58, this just magically disappears and the whole snare hit sounds more like a gunshot and not like a woody honky. And of course, there is some phase cancellation going on between 2 microphones. That's normal. You can look at this. So I really made sure the transients are aligned. But of course, still we get some frequencies that cancel out. Let me just flip the phase on one of the mics and you will probably hear that. There it is. And back. Very nice combination. So I decided to use those 2 microphones and to blend them. Now let's have a listen to the room. That just sounds awesome. Lovely. They don't need any processing at all. And like I told you, like I expected, because those Bayer condenser mics sound quite bright, they still have like a really snappy, nice attack. Even if they're like very far away and deep inside that chamber. Then we have the overheads. And overheads are so important for a complete snare drum tone because closed mics always sound a little artificial. Room mics are nice for adding some kind of space and reverb, and overheads are so important because they make a snare sound natural. They give you that stereo flop, flop, flop kind of thing. So the overheads are always very important for my snare sound. And it sounds really cool here. I just don't want that much reverb from the overheads. So that's why I added this plugin here. This is the transient shaper from Softube. And I just, pulled down the sustain so they are a little shorter before and after. And accidentally, I found something really cool because this is a 2-band transient shaper. If you just cut the sustain of the lower frequencies, you get that nice whip sound. I wasn't using it now, but it's kind of cool as well. And I was actually using it, you will see that in a minute. I was actually using that later to create the samples. But for now, I just reduced the sustain because I just wanted to have that flop, flop from the overheads. Then one other thing, if you look at the waveform here, you can see that the signal was arriving like a few samples earlier on the left side compared to the right. I added a delay, but only to the left side. Right side is bypassed, 0.4 milliseconds. Without the delay, you can hear that the attack arrives a little faster on the left side. And with the delay, it moves it to the center. I only did that with the lower tuning samples, not with the higher ones. I'm sorry for that. I was too lazy to do it again. Anyway, this is the only processing that I used here. And the only other thing I did is adding a little more highs to the M201 close mics with this plugin. This is the Abbey Road whatever plugin from Softube. Before, after. Quite a lot, 6 dB of 10K. Then I sent both the close mics into a group. And here I pulled out the transient shaper one more time on both closed microphones, and just to cut down the sustain again, because I don't need that. You could still hear, have a listen. a lot of the reverb even on the close mic. So I was trying to get rid of that. And this time only in the lows. Have a listen. And that's a nice effect, right? It pulls out the room out of all the lower frequencies, but leaves that in there. Instead of just pulling out everything. Really cool plugin. Then I added another little EQ here. Just a little more punch. And that's it. This is the sound of the close mics. Overheads. And room. Yes. And as you can see, we've got a lot of snare hits going from very soft to very hard. So I can create some multi-samples, and that's what I did next. So I bounced the final room, overhead, and close mics to a new file, and you can see the files down here. Close mics and room and overheads. And then I just listened to the different hits and chose the right hits for the multi-sample. So I usually start here. You can see in red, these are my like heavy hits. Just the close samples. And the more you go to the left, the softer it gets. So here. So the final samples do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different velocity layers, which is actually a lot. Here's the softest. And you can see it's always 2 hits per layer and 3 hits for the hardest hit, because that's the one that is being used the most in metal. And then I turn this into TCI files, so you can load this into Trigger. Everybody has that plugin, right? Trigger, and can fire it into your production. And I did this for both the deep tuning and the high tuning. Now let's go back to the final samples. Here we go. And you can see it sounds very dynamic, like so that's the multi-samples. If you want to get the multi-samples, the TCI files, and the WAV files, join my academy, Cola Audio Cult. And you will get so much more. Tons of courses about recording, mixing, and mastering from me and from a lot of other awesome metal producers, and everything from hard rock to the most brutal black metal is in there. And there are more samples, there are free IRs, there are free plugins. Just have a look at the link below. If you haven't done that, have a look at Cola Audio Cult. Right now, we're adding these samples and you can have fun with them there. The multi-sampled version. But for everybody else, there's also one-shot samples. So I did a one-shot sample of the high-pitched version, and it's 3 samples. So it's close, overheads, and room, so you can blend that yourself, right? I didn't want to do a final sample because maybe then you don't want to have that much of the reverb, blah, blah, blah. So keep in mind, these samples are still pretty much raw. There's no compression on them, for example, because I want them to sit right in the production. So you might have to add even some more high frequencies, some attack maybe, some compression. But I'm curious what you can do with them. If you want to download the free one-shot version, all you got to do is subscribe to my email list. And now listen, it's a little complicated. In the final confirmation mail, there's another link to my Discord server. You go there, and there is a, what is it called, a thread or something with all my free stuff, all the free stuff I have ever released. So you find more samples there and IRs and other stuff. And so you go there, Discord server, and that's where you download. If you don't understand it, don't ask me. I've explained it, okay? I'm sorry. Thanks to Biodynamic for letting me into their holy halls and for letting me use and abuse their reverb chamber to record these samples. Check out the Bio microphones, links below. They all sound great, right? So 3 or 4 mics actually sounded awesome. Great mics. Many people don't know them. Real sleepers. Check them out. Links to all microphones below. That's all for today. Enjoy the samples. Let me know how you like this video, how you like me, how you like the microphones, and anything else you want to tell me. Thanks for watching. I see you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye-bye.